And a swell good evening to all of you dear listeners out there on the wonderful internet. You're listening to Oatstralia on Air Live. This is FanFiction Fridays with yours truly, Golden Microphone. I do apologize that we've had ourselves a couple of weeks worth of hiatus with absolutely no excuse whatsoever. I apologize. I've really nothing to offer on this other than, well, for our Australian listeners, you probably know what I've been doing, mostly opposing the current government's plans to do terrible, terrible things to our economy. Well, they believe they're doing a good thing, but personally, dear listeners, as an opinion, I don't. I don't think they're going to do a very good thing for our economy. I think they're going to make ours nosedive. For all of you international listeners, if you're wondering what it is that's happening and why most of the Australian blogs have probably blown up in your faces recently, you know, like when the guys were elected in, let's just say that we're going to be turning our current system of Medicare, social services, medical services, and social services in general from the Switzerland and Sweden system to the American system in 3 years' time. Kind of a fundamental grinding to a halt of all of our rights, liberties, and so forth. Here I am talking about liberties. I'm not even American, but I soon will be. Apparently. Not that that's a bad thing. I wouldn't mind going to America for a visit. That'd be nice. I'd like to see you guys over there. Maybe see Pony Kenobi in his natural habitat. I don't know. Not that I didn't see him in his natural habitat on a stage rocking the hell out. That was awesome. Still, let's not get too far into politics when we're here to relax after a week, or in my case 3, of terrible again, of stressful events and just workplace things in general. You all know the stresses. All of you do. In order to kick off such a lovely evening tonight, we're going to be continuing our stories as we turn the music back down and turn away from the fire. We now make our way over to FanFiction.net. And yes, the cracking and popping you're hearing is the fire in the background. I will be turning that down shortly. The story that we'll be turning our attention to is Vinyl and Octavia University Days, Chapter 6. I'll be posting this into the social stream and chat if you haven't gotten there already. It'll also be posted to Facebook, so that's always nice. Yep, there we go. And for you listening on YouTube later on, it'll be in the description below. Without further ado, let's get on with Vinyl and Octavia University Days, Chapter 6. Octavia felt more than a little ridiculous wearing the university-designed saddle. She'd so far resisted the urge to refer to herself as a walking billboard, but only out of respect for Vinyl. The unicorn was very insistent that she wear it for some reason. It wasn't the style that was the problem, for it was quite a cute thing that rode nicely on her flank, but rather the big WMU on the side. Octavia tried not to be as fussy about fashion as her mother had been, but honestly, who wants to wear words on their clothes? The whole point of wearing things was to make a visually engaging statement. Having letters just seemed redundant. Regardless of her true feelings, the cellist maintained a pleasantly unconcerned demeanor as she accompanied Vinyl into the empty classroom. What exactly will I be doing? The DJ scratched the back of her head. Standing still, I guess. Think you're up to it? You're hilarious. The first pony other than them to arrive was the teacher, a mare with a pale green coat and grey, distinguished hair. She gave the pair a friendly smile and had a decidedly easygoing air about her. "Hello, Vinyl. And you must be the mare we've heard so much about?" "It would appear so." Octavia glanced at Vinyl, wondering what exactly "so much" entailed. The teacher also possessed a remarkable ability to sense her thoughts. "That was a joke, dear. Vinyl hasn't told us anything about you. I see that you will certainly meet our needs, however. It's been a while since we've practiced on models who actually live up to their title." The cellist smiled and tipped her head gracefully. "You flatter me. I'm just happy to be of assistance." "You remind me of my niece. So polite." "That one. Oh, but I'll have to insist that you take that saddle off. We're studying the body, not the clothes." Inwardly sighing in relief, Octavia slipped the saddle off and deposited it on the table. Lionel's mouth opened as if to interject, but before she could say anything, the rest of the class arrived en masse. The DJ slipped away to a desk far away from the grey mare and began to unpack her equipment. It felt somewhat awkward, standing at the front of the class beside the teacher. For a brief, surreal moment, she thought it was high school once again, and she was being called upon to give a speech for which she had not prepared. Shaking her head to gain freedom from those thoughts, she smirked slightly. Unprepared for a speech? Now that was surreal. "All right, class. As I've told you last week, we're going to practice drawing correctly proportioned ponies." The teacher raised her hoof toward the cellist. "Assisting us today is the beautiful— I'm sorry, I don't think I caught your name." "The fault is mine. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Octavia." A few murmurs passed through the class, and most of the stallions sat up straighter, suddenly very keen on paying attention. Vinyl rolled her eyes as Shady followed suit. "Careful, your eyes are going to fall out if you stare any harder," she whispered, earning the satisfaction of seeing him become aware of his behavior. "Hey, I have no control over my eyes, dude. They go where they want. And right now they want some of that flank, know what I'm saying?" he hissed back, grinning madly. "Oh, you have no idea. And neither do I." "You're a perv. You're such a prude." Vinyl snorted at that, and soon both of them were muffling their laughter. It was a good few minutes before they realized that the class had begun sketching, and they quickly got to work. Octavia looked slightly uncomfortable standing alone now that the teacher had sat down at her desk, yet she managed to remain completely motionless. A more interesting subject Vinyl had never experienced. 3 glowing pencils drew at the same time on her sheet, each at different pressures and angles, carving a monochrome cellist out of reality. Caught in an explosion of light that seemed to permeate and enhance her like sunlight shining upon clouds, the little Octavia seemed more real than the classroom around her. The mare herself noticed that the ponies were slowly turning, one by one, to look back at the DJ, who was feverishly scratching at the paper with several white-hazed pencils. Octavia had never seen Vinyl so completely absorbed in something before. It was truly a new perspective. Eventually, even the teacher ambled on over to her desk and peeked at the work. As much as she hated to interrupt, it was unavoidable. Vinyl? Sorry, dear, the sketch is supposed to be realistic." The white unicorn frowned and the pencils paused mid-stroke. She picked up the page and held it aloft, comparing the subject with her work. "What are you talking about? It looks exactly like her." Octavia desperately wanted to charge over and snatch the paper for herself, but she resisted the urge and focused on staying still. "It's a little bit, impressionistic." "What? How?" Vinyl asked defensively. The teacher leaned down so she couldn't be overheard. "Well, to my eyes, Octavia doesn't seem to be glowing with ethereal light. I think you might be having an artistic version of a Freudian slip." The cellist saw Vinyl's eyes widen in response to the mare's whispers, and a dark blush flooded her white cheeks in the most fascinating way. What in Equestria is she embarrassed about? Did she make a mistake? The DJ closed her notepad and began packing up, accompanied by a chorus of disappointed groans as the rest of the class was denied a chance to go over her work. The teacher didn't ask why, nor did she try to stop her. Instead, she returned to the front of the class and drew attention away from Vinyl by discussing how to position cutie marks correctly. Octavia tried to catch the unicorn's eye, but it seemed to look everywhere but her. In moments, she swept out the door, blue hair bobbing. Trapped under the gaze of a dozen students, there was nothing she could do until the class ended. Take note of how her cutie mark is in the center of each flank, and be careful when drawing the treble clef. Those of you who haven't studied music might find it— "Oh!" exclaimed the dark brown stallion who had sat beside Vinyl. All attention turned to him, and he quickly stammered an explanation. I just realized what I was doing wrong." A few sniggers was all the social punishment he received for interrupting the teacher, and he quickly returned to staring at the cellist cutie mark. It was slightly more humiliating than she had expected. Perhaps that's why Vinyl had tried to make her wear the saddle. It covered that area rather well. So many questions! She hoped her DJ friend was up for a very long phone call tonight. Granted, she would be tired. Vinyl had her musical theory class straight after drawing. Well, tomorrow they would definitely get to chat. Friday was Psych Day, and they would be putting their new tactic into action. After that, Vinyl would have to face the music. Psych patrolled the front of the class, wild red mane and tail bobbing with energy. "Wow!" he exclaimed. A few moments passed, and he continued to pace. "Wow!" he said again. "I mean, can you believe it? We're already in week 5. I don't know about you lot, but I feel like we've really bonded over the last few classes, especially our favorite pair." Instantly, all eyes snapped to both mares, who sat on opposite sides of the class as usual. They didn't even open their mouths, showing no reaction. Psyche raised an eyebrow and gave it another shot. "So, how was the movie?" Again, no visible sign that they even heard him. Finding no entertainment in silence, the tutor cut his losses. "All right, let's just move on. Now, the next assignment." He launched into a list of what was expected, and the ponies quickly began writing, all thoughts of the two mares forgotten. From across the classroom, Vinyl desperately wanted to wink or smirk at Octavia in celebration of their apparent success, but she knew it could cost them dearly if some pony noticed. For though the majority of the class was focused on writing, one particular unicorn, who happened to have a lyre on her flank, didn't take her eyes off the DJ for a moment. Her left eye was darkened by bruising, giving her quite a terrifying scowl. Interestingly, Bonbon sat at a different table today, and winced every time her left forehoof touched something. With no long-winded arguments to extend the classes, it lasted barely another 20 minutes before Psyche reluctantly let every pony go. "Sorry, every pony. I guess I started planning these things around their arguments, and now they're clearly conspiring together to disrupt my class." He looked between the two quickly. "No?" "All right, fine. Same time next week, every pony." Surprisingly, he actually seemed a bit confused by their tactic. As they dispersed, Vinyl took her usual path up the hill back toward the main court. Octavia suppressed the urge to catch up and begin interrogating the DJ. She had waited all day for this. She could wait a few minutes longer. Unfortunately, that insufferable green unicorn was going the same way, glaring at Vinyl from behind. With her in the way, there was no way Octavia would be able to speak to Vinyl in private. Lyra seemed intent on not letting the DJ out of her sight. With no other options, the cellist resigned herself to trying a late-night conversation. It irked her that things kept obstructing her righteous questioning, but she kept calm and changed course, heading back to her flat. So help her if Vinyl didn't answer the phone. Calling Vinyl. It was only midnight, but Octavia couldn't wait any longer. She had never realized just how boring being alone was. It was so quiet. More than once she wished she could hear Vinyl snorting back a laugh, or speaking loudly and giggling between words like she did when she was feeling playful. She'd sometimes wave her hooves around excitedly when ideas occurred to her, or when the cellist confessed she hadn't listened to certain artists. "You're joking, right?" she'd say, the raising of her eyebrows indicating that her eyes were wide behind the glasses. Not in the slightest. I told you, I don't listen to much of that dubstep, Octavia would reply, further inciting shocked reactions from Vinyl. But it's the greatest kind of music ever! Hey, hello? Yo, Octavia, are you there or what? Snapping out of a daze, she quickly remembered what she was doing. Oh, hello, Vinyl. Sorry, I was distracted. Oh, good. What's up? For a moment, her mind blanked. What was so important again? There was a muffled crunching from the other end, meaning Vinyl was having a midnight snack. She always ate like a pig and still managed to stay at the perfect weight. Maybe she should ask her how she does it. How are you not fat? A pause. What? Octavia reddened and mentally kicked herself. I'm sorry, ignore that. I keep getting distracted tonight. After a moment, during which Vinyl was probably weighing whether to investigate further, the crunching resumed. No worries, I guess. What I did want to talk about was the drawing class. The crunching slowed slightly. Yeah? The DJ's voice sounded cautious. I was wondering why you ran out halfway through the lesson. I was... done. Done? Done. Finished the sketch and the dude let me go. Oh, that's it? She just finished early? But that didn't explain her avoidance of the cellist. Although, did she really avoid her? Or am I just so needy that I require attention at all times? Yep. The Earth Pony was slightly startled until she realized that the DJ could not, in fact, read minds, and was instead trying to continue the conversation. I suppose, with that out of the way, what are you doing tomorrow? I got a whole heap of stuff lined up this weekend. I don't think we have time to chill till Monday. Octavia couldn't help but feel slightly hurt, but she did her best to squash the feeling. That's okay. However, we both have 2 lectures on Monday. There's no way we'll have time to talk and do what we normally do, she trailed off. Hey, this is totally off topic, but did you know that lectures aren't compulsory? They actually record them so students can listen to them later. I do know that, yes, but considering I live on campus, I don't really have an excuse to miss them. Vinyl chuckled lightly. I'm glad to hear that. So by the time your second lecture ends, it'll be like midday, right? The cellist wasn't sure how any of this was relevant. Yes, that's correct. And your first lecture starts at 8:30? Yes. What do you do during the breaks between lectures? I'm not sure where you're going with this, but usually I'll get something to eat and study in the library. Now she was really confused. Uh-huh. All right, that works out awesomely. I promise you, Octavia, we'll find time to chill on Monday. Vinyl giggled a bit, but seemed to try to control herself. You're being very strange tonight. Have you been drinking? The cellist asked warily. What? No! But that does give me an idea. Sorry, babe, I gotta go. Later. With a click, Octavia was alone again. No doubt, Vinyl was off to a bar to get extremely drunk for no discernible reason. That was one activity that they would never share. Hiding behind her age might work now, but that would change in a few weeks' time. Then, well, she'd cross that bridge when she came to it. It would be tough. Wait, did Vinyl just call me babe? Octavia almost squealed. My first nickname! Aww. That was Chapter 6 of Vinyl and Octavia University Days. Aww. Well, that was really nice. It was really nice. It was so cute. Well, I certainly can't wait to see what happens next and what on earth does Vinyl have planned for Octavia? Well, I suppose we'll find out next week, or will we? Remember, your vote counts to what stories are heard or not heard in the next episode. So, in the comments or in the chat and live stream, please leave a yay or a nay for this story. If you want it to continue, go for yay. If you don't want it to continue, go for nay. Whichever comes up the most wins. All right then, we're going to take ourselves a quick break. with a rather famous little ditty that came out, how long ago was this one? I think about a year ago. Oh, well, famous little ditty, all about Tavi and Scratch. This is the Tropical Octave.
You may call it a crash, I call it a flying. Here to perform in this deserted island. Jealous cause I leave a pony smiling. You need to chill cause you know it's who I am. Out here no cell phone service. With a blank stare but on service. Purpose, not worthless, look under the surface. Clear blue sea and these ponies are shirtless. Spectacular, but you don't speak tree. The vernacular, you know what beats me. Never mastered words, it isn't easy to leave a wreck afterwards. Daddy please, please, I need a beat. We need an atlas, I need a drink, but we're rather mapless. At an impasse, pass me the trackless in fact, so I lack this, I blast this. Not known to be patient, so far from home from our equestrian nation. Miss a standing ovation, miss the lights on the stage with a grand innovation. Paint is face, heavy, I drop it. Smile in place, don't know you got it. Don't always get what you're hoping for. More worry than a bat with a joke or more. But we're still breathing, and the sunset is setting so sweetly this evening. Know you're thinking of leaving, but though it seems hopeless, I hope you believe me. It's an issue, not insurmountable. Never was a test, no one holds you accountable. Can't advance in life without stressing, but worry defeats, let me teach you a lesson. Life is full of problems, life is full of hurting, but it's hard just to solve when your mind isn't certain that you're on the right path, right track. What's that? Don't know where we are, but I know where we're at. Galapagos Islands, I'm here with you. Don't pick sides when it's only we two. Don't brood. What did I do? You're my best friend, there's no need to argue. Have a good time, I don't need your permission, but time will crawl by when work's inefficient. Know that you're ready to go and get fishing, but tabby, stop and just listen. We'll carry on, somebody get you, so sing your song. The melody will let you get you where it's gone. Celeste will bless you, new day will dawn, we'll focus on our rescue. 1, 2, 3, tabby, dance with me. Though we're lost at sea, depressed is just no way to be. Come on, let's take things slow. Help is on its way, I know, so we know where to go. Call it a crash or call it a flying. Here to perform on this deserted island. Jealous cause I leave a pony smiling. You need to chill cause you know just who I am. Out here no cell phone service. With a blank stare but don't serve its purpose. Not worthless, look under the surface. Clear blue sea and these ponies are shirtless.
A lovely bouncy ditty. That was a Tropical Octave by Coconeru. Fantastic. Even got me dancing in my seat. I can't help it. It's so bouncy and I'm not really sure what I'm thinking here, but I just know that I have fun whenever I hear that song. You're listening to Oatstralia on Air Live. This is FanFiction Fridays with yours truly, Golden Microphone. With a couple of announcements before we get ourselves into the next wonderful story, which is Of Age. The announcements come forth from Hoofwave Podcast. Well, they only asked me to give a shout out, so go listen to the Hoofwave Podcast. That's literally all they asked me to say. Shout out to the guys, Nav and Kuroshi, who do the podcast. They are brilliant friends of mine, and they are funny together. Those two are fantastic, hilarious even. Go and check them out. Really, go and check them out. Heck, you know what? I'm going to leave a link in the description below for all of you listening on YouTube later. I'm sorry to my live listeners. I'm not giving a link for that because I can't really find them right at this moment. But I will put it into YouTube later and onto Oatstralia on Air at our Facebook page. So check out those links. That'll be fantastic. The next announcement that I have is that, well, believe it or not, and you may remember this, I am a part of Sydneigh, the new convention coming to Sydney, all about ponies, all about, well, actually it's not all about ponies, believe it or not. It's more of a, if I'm not mistaken, it's more of a pop culture convention that started out as ponies. Yes, and it'll be a blast, mainly because I'm going to be there as one of the MCs along with Matthew McKenna. We're going to be up on stage, we're going to be directing you guys, we're going to be doing some crazy funny things. It's going to be a blast. There's some fantastic guests. For example, as has been confirmed, and I'm not sure if you guys have heard, but Ashley Ball. Holy crap. That's awesome. If you don't know anything about Sydneigh, please, please, please go and uh, check out their Tumblr and their Facebook page. Check out everything involving Sydneigh. There's going to be a bunch of new announcements coming out soon because they've been a little bit quiet as of recently. But from what I hear, they are going to be coming out with a ton more information. Lots more stuff for you guys to be excited about. Check them out. Facebook, Tumblr. I think a few of them have Instagram. I'm not entirely sure, but go ahead and check them out. It'll be fantastic. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be called up for doing a few things before the actual convention comes up, so stay tuned, see what happens. I honestly don't know what they're going to do with me, but stay tuned for it. It's going to be funny, I think. Well, I think so, because I think I'm funny. And now I'm rambling. So instead of more rambling, let's get on with the next story. This is one of my favorite Spike stories, believe it or not. Yes, these things exist. Good Spike stories. This is Of Age. I'm just going to go ahead and pop that into the chat and the social stream, which will also be sent to Facebook. Awesome. That's a live thing. And for you listening on YouTube, have a look below in the description once again, and you can follow along. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Chapter 5 of Age. Apple Bloom! Applejack exclaimed, galloping up the Ponyville street towards them. Oh, thank Celestia, you're safe. Spike moved out of the way as Applejack ran past, scooping her kid sister up into a hug. Oh, Applejack, I'm sorry if I made you nervous, Apple Bloom said. Nervous? Applejack stepped backwards, pulling back to look the filly in the eyes. Try terrified. Where in tarnation have you been? It's a long story, Twilight cut in. The important thing is that she and Scootaloo are safe now, as is Spike. Yeah, but... Scootaloo began, throwing a glance back in the direction of the Everfree Forest. What is it? Applejack asked. Sweetie Belle is missing, Apple Bloom sobbed. Because of me, Spike added, guilt coursing through his little dragon body. Because I failed Rarity. He crossed his arms over his chest, unable to look Applejack in the eye. Twilight took a careful step forward. We need to organize a search party. We think she went after Rarity. Applejack put a protective hoof around Apple Bloom. This is terrible. Just terrible. Where was Rarity headed anyway? Applejack asked. To the other side of the Everfree Forest, Spike explained, wincing. She was supposed to go alone, but I'm pretty sure Sweetie Belle followed her. And it gets worse. Rarity was supposed to have guards meet her, but now it seems they aren't coming, Twilight finished. Spike felt a tremor of panic go through him, glad that Twilight at least had her senses about her to explain things properly. Listen, Applejack, the mayor continued. It really is a long story and just now got even more complicated. We need to gather every pony together. I'll explain everything then. We have a job to do. Applejack nodded. If you say so, Twilight, she replied, nodding firmly. I'll round up the girls and we'll meet you at your place in a jiffy. Thank you, Twilight said. Spike watched as Applejack walked off back through Ponyville. Apple Bloom and Scootaloo followed her, their shoulders still droopy. In turn, Spike trailed Twilight to her library, with Pee-wee following him. The atmosphere was solemn, even as every pony else in town went about their business as usual. Twilight walked with an air of calm that Spike could only wish to emulate. He had no idea what Twilight was planning, but by the look in her eyes she'd put together some sort of idea in her brain already. Usually he found that reassuring, but knowing Rarity was out there, in danger, without the help she was meant to have, Spike didn't feel very reassured by anything at the moment. Twilight, do you think Rarity's okay? Spike asked. He couldn't help himself. Twilight hesitated, and Spike's face paled even through his purple scales. Oh, Celestia, she doesn't, Spike realized. She doesn't think she's okay. Twilight looked at the dragon, her eyes a bit wide. I'm sure she's fine. Twilight said with far more confidence than Spike knew she must really have. Twilight wasn't as bad as Applejack, but she still wasn't the best liar in Equestria by any stretch of the imagination. "And I'm sure Sweetie Belle is fine too," Twilight said, continuing toward the library. "But all the same, we really should hurry." At least on that, Spike could agree. Twilight picked up her pace, and Spike walked as fast as his little feet could move to keep up with the mare. His legs protested at the speed, exhausted from the night before and all the walking he'd been doing recently, but Spike moved them quickly anyway. "If I was a bigger dragon, this would be easier," Spike sighed to himself as they reached the library and went inside. Twilight walked straight through the first room, past the bookshelves, while Spike leaned against the wall inside, panting a bit. As fast as he could run, it would never be as fast as Twilight or the others. He was just too small. Too small. Too small to help Rarity? A little voice nagged him from the back of his mind. You don't have to be. You know how to grow bigger. Spike slammed a fist against the wall behind him. No. No way. He'd never grow like that again. He'd never grow so fast that he forgot everyone and everything he cared about. He wouldn't. Spike looked down at his 2 small feet under his baby fat belly. All the same, it'd be nice to at least grow a little. Situations like this just highlighted how tired he was of being treated like a child and continually looking like one, too. He couldn't remember the last time his height had changed. Well, other than that one awful day. Spike clenched and unclenched his fists. He watched Twilight race around the library, gathering materials. They'd grown up together, him and her. Somehow, though, Twilight had grown way more than he had. Spike narrowed his eyes. Stop it, Spike, he told himself. Better to not grow at all than to turn into some kind of monster again. Maybe this is how it's supposed to be. Maybe us dragons just age loads slower than ponies. But there was still the matter of his bizarre birthday growth spurt. Spike shook his head, leaving the wall and walking up the library stairs where Pee-wee had flown earlier. He didn't have time for these thoughts. He needed to pack. "A pleasure to properly meet you, Lord Margonet," Rarity said, dipping her head out of respect. A duke? She'd had no idea. Next to her in the meadow, her sister bowed slightly too, just a brief moment after Rarity did. The sea serpent put a hand to his cheek, turning and blushing. "Oh, no need to be so formal. I consider you a friend. Please, call me Stefan," he insisted. Rarity smiled, glancing back up at him. "Very well then, Stefan," she said. "I'm ever so honored to be in the company of such a high-ranking official such as yourself." She kept her face pleasant, despite wanting to wince in horror as she realized what the state of coat and mane might have been. She had been sleeping in the grass, after all. Rarity was also fairly certain she still had mud on her face from the Everfree Forest as well. Oh dear. "Please excuse my appearance, and that of my sister," Rarity apologized. "We've been traveling, you see, and had we known we'd be meeting a duke, we would of course have tidied up ourselves for the occasion." "Rarity?" Sweetie Belle asked, as Stefan Margonet scoffed at the mere suggestion that Rarity didn't look anything less than fabulous. "Yes, sweetie?" Rarity asked. How exactly do you know the Duke of Sea Serpentia?" Sweetie Belle blinked up at her sister. "Why, she rescued me from a terrible fate, of course," Stefan replied for Rarity. "You did?" Sweetie Belle asked, raising a surprised eyebrow. It was Rarity's turn for feigned embarrassment. "Oh, now really, Stefan, it wasn't all that much," she said, waving a hoof toward the sea serpent. "Oh, it was, Stefan insisted. "Why, without you, I would have been half-moustached for goodness knows how long. How could I face anyone in the royal court like that?" "Half-moustached?" Sweetie Belle asked, looking up at Stefan's fully moustached face. "Yes, it was a tragic tale," Stefan said. "I'll never forget that day. A little cloud of smoke came rushing at me from out of nowhere, and suddenly, poof! Half of my glorious moustache was gone, torn. Oh, cruel, cruel fate! Stefan put the back of his hand to his forehead dramatically. Rarity's heart swelled for the serpent. A tragic tale indeed. But then, Stefan gasped, turning his claw out as if he was peering into the distance. From the mists of the forest came a saviour! This lovely young mare, he said, gesturing to Rarity with gratitude in his eyes. She most graciously offered me her tail in place of my missing moustache. Ever since that day I have sung her praises to all the high courts of Sea Serpentia. A pony who understands the important things in life. You gave him your tail? Sweetie Belle asked, her voice squeaking in surprise. I don't remember you ever being tailless. Rarity laughed, actually and truly embarrassed by that point. Oh, sweetie, it grew back fairly quickly. But why did you give him your tail? Sweetie asked next. I mean, I get not wanting to walk around with half a mustache, she said, looking up at Stefan. But why not just shave the other half off so both sides can grow back in together, evenly? Why? Stefan gaped at the filly. Rarity's eyes flew open. Sweetie Belle, do you hear yourself, young lady? To lose just one half of such a magnificent moustache was bad enough, but to even suggest losing both halves, you cannot be serious. No, she cannot, Stefan agreed. Sweetie Belle looked mildly terrified as both the sea serpent and her big sister glared down at her. She winced. Well, it's good that I wasn't serious then, right? Didn't you get the joke? I was just joking, she covered quickly. Rarity watched her sister carefully. She obviously hadn't been joking, but she at least had the good graces to act as if she was, for Stefan's sake. That was a start, at least. While Sweetie Belle's suggestion had been perfectly reasonable, the filly clearly had no idea of how much a mustache mattered to Stefan's self-identity. It seemed that Sweetie Belle needed a lesson in the art of sensitivity at some future date. Rarity filed that thought away, looking up at Stefan and hoping her sister's slip-up hadn't completely ruined their report. A joke? Stefan asked slowly. Oh, a joke! I see! Well, that's entirely different then, he said, scooping Sweetie Belle up and giving her a noogie. Oh, what a wonderful gift, having such a sense of humour! He laughed, and Rarity couldn't help but laugh a little too. However, her laughter was more out of relief and amusement at Sweetie Belle's uncomfortable expression as her mane got tussled by a giant reptile. Nice save, Sweetie Belle, Rarity thought to herself in approval. Stefan Margonette set a dizzy-looking Sweetie Belle back down on the ground and beamed at Rarity. I do ever so like your sister. She's more than welcome to join us on our trip back to my home waters. Rarity blanched a bit. Sweetie Belle, on her assigned mission to stop a war. Rarity went completely still, processing the idea. She could see no way this would end well. Great! Sweetie Belle exclaimed, using one hoof to straighten out her mane. The filly grinned at Rarity. Rarity held back a groan, doing her best to maintain an air of sophistication around the Duke. Stopping this war depended on her making a good impression on the sea serpents and later, the dragons. However, with Sweetie Belle along for the ride. Sweetie Belle, I think it may be best if we get you home, dear, she said tentatively. This is a rather dangerous mission, after all. All the more reason I should come along, Sweetie Belle exclaimed. That's the stupidest reasoning I've ever heard, Rarity wanted to say. She gave her sister a stern look. I'm not sure I follow your logic, Rarity said instead, mindful of Stefan behind her. There is no safer place in the world than the center of Sea Serpentia, Stefan said. Isn't your country currently at war? Once again, Rarity held back from saying what was really on her mind. "I'm sure Sea Serpentia is lovely," Rarity said delicately. "And quite well protected," she added. "But given your current international predicament, I'm not sure it is the best place for my baby sister to visit." "Far safer there than to venture back through that horrid forest," Stefan pointed out. Rarity looked at the grass below her feet. He had a point. She couldn't very well send Sweetie Belle back through the Everfree Forest alone, and taking her back herself would mean losing at least 2 more days of travel, plus goodness knows what sort of dangers. If only the royal guards had shown up like they'd meant to. Speaking of... Rarity looked up at the sea serpent. "Stefan," she began gently, "not to pry, but wasn't I supposed to be accompanied by your kin? Accompanied to your kin by the Equestrian Royal Guard? Why are you here to fetch me instead of them?" The sea serpent dropped his skinny arms to his side. "We hadn't heard from them. They were meant to send word to us at a checkpoint last night, but never did. The others said we should wait longer, but how could I leave a lady like yourself waiting out here all alone? I just had to come and find you." Rarity's mind reeled. The guards hadn't checked in. She could think of a few different reasons they may not have checked in, but to both not check in and to not reach the meadow on time, well, Shining Armor just didn't run a guard that wasn't punctual. There was little doubt in her mind that her guards had run into trouble. Big trouble. Oh dear. Rarity gave herself a brief shake of the head. She couldn't let herself think too much about it. "Thank you, Stefan," she said to the sea serpent. "That was quite thoughtful of you." Stefan glanced around. "I do suggest we get going now, O generous one," he said in reply. "We do not know what delayed your guard, but I have my suspicions." His eyes moved skyward, and Rarity felt a tremor go through her body. Dragons. Stefan thought dragons had gotten the guard. That's it. Sweetie Belle is going home right now. It was no longer a matter of propriety. It was entirely a matter of safety. Rarity took a step toward her little sister, ready to magically chuck her straight over the Everfree Forest back to Ponyville if it came to it. As if reading her thoughts, Stefan put a claw on her shoulder. "With the state of things, that is, with the guard not arriving, well, I personally would be nervous to head back into there, and I'm much bigger than either of you." Rarity stopped walking, her breath quickening as her mind caught up with what Stefan said. If there was a force out there successfully hunting down the Royal Guard, what chance did she have? What chance did any of them have? It wasn't as if she actually could magically chuck her sister over the forest back home. Maybe Twilight had that power, but Rarity knew her levitation skills were nowhere near those of Celestia's favorite student. Sweetie Belle glanced between her sister and the sea serpent. "Rarity?" she began slowly. Rarity knew that meant Sweetie Belle was about to suggest something that she was nervous to ask her sister about, and prepared herself for the worst. "I don't want to go back into that forest," the filly said. "Last night was enough. Can't we go with Stefan? He could take us somewhere safe, and when we're with him, scary things should leave us alone." "And I could continue with my mission, as the princess asked." Rarity didn't like where this was going. Sweetie Belle was making too much sense. Dangerous sense. Stefan would be like a shield of safety from most perils just by his sheer size. A light went on in Rarity's brain. All right, one last tactic. "Stefan, is there any chance you could swim us back through the Everfree Forest on that river we found you at last time? I really would like to get my sister home to Ponyville. Then I would happily accompany you to your country." Stefan hesitated. "It would be a bit of a detour." Rarity put on her best pleading eyes, blinking up at the serpent. "But I'd be willing to sacrifice a day if it would give you peace of mind." Stefan added quickly, "I did bring a raft for your use, after all." Rarity beamed. "Thank you, Stefan." Sweetie Belle looked warily back at the forest, tense as thread caught improperly in a sewing machine. Rarity feared she would argue further. Instead, the filly kicked a rock across the ground. "Stupid forest," was all she said. "Woo! Woo! Woo!" Pinkie Pie jumped up and down in the library, attempting to catch Rainbow Dash. Pegasus flew overhead, dipping every other moment in the air and laughing hysterically. "As I was saying," Twilight glared at the two of them, "I can't imagine why Princess Celestia didn't ask us to help with this covert mission to the middle of a war zone in the first place, but she is asking now." Applejack coughed loudly, caught Spike's glance, and rolled her eyes at Pinkie and Dash. That got Spike snickering a bit, despite his nerves. Yeah, no problem." Rainbow Dash waved a hoof at them, dodging another of Pinkie's leaps. "I mean, seriously, how many times have we saved Equestria by now? This is going to be a cakewalk." "It is?" Pinkie stopped jumping, instead throwing her hooves at her face. "I love cakewalks!" "Pinkie," Twilight warned, "it won't be that easy. Rainbow Dash is just being facetious." "Facetious?" Pinkie asked, blinking at Twilight. "It means I was being super fast," Rainbow Dash explained before Twilight had a chance to respond. "Seriously, Pinkie, do you never read?" "Actually," Twilight said, "facetious means—" Spike stamped one foot. "Could we maybe stop with the language lesson and get going with the plan to save Rarity and Sweetie Belle?" he asked. He knew Twilight, and if she got off on a teaching tangent, they'd never get the conversation back on track. Twilight looked over at him, startled. "Oh, right. Yes, where were we?" "Something about an ancient scroll giving dragons the rights to sea serpent territory," Applejack supplied. "Right." Twilight nodded. She continued to give her friends a rundown of Princess Celestia's letter, and Spike found his thoughts drifting back to Rarity out there in the wilderness. He'd already read the letter. Rarity's mission sounded next to impossible. Couldn't Twilight just explain things on the way? Rarity needed help now. Excuse me, Twilight?" Fluttershy asked as Twilight finished her explanation. Twilight rolled a map into a pack and nodded towards Fluttershy. "Yes? If it wouldn't be too much of a bother, I think I would be more useful here. You know, in Ponyville," Fluttershy said, shrinking away from her friends. "Fluttershy." Twilight narrowed her eyes. "You know, just as a, well, backup? Ponyville backup?" Fluttershy suggested hopefully. "Oh, don't tell me you're afraid of dragons again!" Rainbow Dash landed on the library floor next to Fluttershy, jabbing one hoof into her shoulder. Fluttershy squeaked. "I thought you'd gotten over that." "You did stare down that one dragon pretty impressively, Sugar Cube," Applejack said. "That was just one dragon." Fluttershy flew backwards a couple steps, away from the other ponies. "You're asking me to walk straight into a battle full of dragons." Spike sighed. He should have seen this particular obstacle coming. "It's just fine to be nervous, Fluttershy," Twilight said, approaching Fluttershy gently. "But remember, we need you along for this. Rarity and Sweetie Belle need you. You have valuable skills that I'm sure will help get us through." "Please, Fluttershy?" Spike asked, walking up next to Twilight. "Remember, I'm a dragon too, and I'm not that scary. I don't think, at least." Spike put a thoughtful claw to his lips. "Anyway, I'm not going to feel safe about this unless you come." "That's right," Applejack nodded. "You don't want Spike back here in the library all panicked because you backed out on us, do you?" "Well, if you put it that way," Fluttershy said slowly. Spike's eyebrows creased. "Hold on a minute." He turned to Applejack. "Back here in the library? But I'm coming with you guys." He spun to look at Twilight. "Aren't I?" Twilight locked eyes with him, and Spike held himself back from collapsing on the floor at Twilight's hooves and begging. "She has to let me come. Rarity's in trouble." "Twilight." Spike swallowed. "Please. I already packed and everything." After a moment's pause, Twilight finally nodded. "Wait, hold on a tick," Applejack said, walking between Spike and Twilight. "You're letting him come? Just because he wants to? I mean, Applebloom and Scootaloo wanted to come too, but I didn't let him." "Oh, really? How'd you manage that?" Rainbow Dash asked. Yeah, seriously. Twilight cocked her head. They're pretty resourceful. Ah, Applejack kicked one foot along the floor sheepishly. I may have lassoed them to an apple tree. What? Twilight gasped. Only for a bit. Applejack defended herself. Big Macintosh is going to let them go before nightfall. Oh no, those poor dears, Fluttershy said, walking over to look out the window in the direction of Sweet Apple Acres. They'll be all right, Applejack said. What doesn't break your hooves, just make 'em stronger. Well, no ponies lassoing me to a tree, Spike said, grabbing his pack bag and moving as far away from Applejack as possible. I already made arrangements with Cheerilee to watch Pee-wee and everything. Spike, Twilight started. How could we leave Spike behind? Pinkie Pie asked, putting a hoof on Spike's shoulder as he accidentally backed straight into her. He has to come. Why, without him, how do we infiltrate Dragon Territory? Infiltrate Dragon Territory? Fluttershy asked, her attention focused back on the task at hoof. Well, duh, Pinkie snorted. None of us are dragons, are we? Spike's got to do it. He'll dash in behind enemy lines, dodging fearsome fire blasts. Spike's hands began to shake at that. Dodging fire blasts? All while wearing this! Pinkie Pie slapped a fake mustache on Spike's face from Celestia knows where. Spike's eyes lit back up. Yeah, now that's what I'm talking about! He grinned, going almost cross-eyed to look down at the stash below his nose. Twilight magicked it off his face before he managed to focus his eyes on it. That's enough, she said. This is serious. Spike's shoulders drooped. Spike, I was going to say earlier that of course you're coming, Twilight said. Spike sucked in a disbelieving breath, staring at Twilight. Pinkie's right, the mayor continued. When it comes to mustaches, I'm always right, Pinkie declared proudly. Not about that, Twilight shot Pinkie an annoyed glare. About Spike infiltrating Dragon Territory. Not that I'd ever send him in alone, as she said as Applejack began to protest. But in general, it might not be a bad idea to have a dragon along when we're trying to stop a war involving dragons. Yes! Spike actually leapt into the air, his hefted bag smacking against his back when he landed. Thank you, Twilight! Besides, Twilight gave him a knowing look, I don't think I'd ever hear the end of it if we went off to help Rarity without him. Spike rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Whatever you say, Twilight, Applejack shrugged in response. So are we going to get going soon or what? Rainbow Dash asked, flying back up into the air and hovering over them all. All this talking isn't helping Rarity or Sweetie Belle, you know. Twilight nodded. Yes, we should get a move on. Let's meet at the edge of town in 15 minutes and we'll make our way through the Everfree Forest together. I'm ready already, Spike said. I'll go wait for you all there. If you say so, Twilight said, smiling at him a little. Spike smiled back. Twilight wanted him to come along. He was going to save Rarity. Everything was going to be all right. Spike left the library and made his way over to the forest's edge, counting down the minutes until every pony else would get there. As he walked past Fluttershy's cottage, he listened for the familiar sound of the small stream that ran out of Everfree Forest. Oddly, try as he might, he couldn't hear it. Spike strained his ears, pausing when he finally got to where the little stream should be. He peered into its banks. It was completely dried up. Huh, Spike said, staring at the pebbles in the stream bed. That's weird. Watch out! Rarity threw herself over Sweetie Belle. The raft they'd attached to Stefan nearly cracked in half as a large wave crashed over them. Careful back there! Stefan called out, dodging as rock after rock hurled toward them from the air. The river they'd been traveling rapidly dammed up, and Stefan made a rushed 180 turn, swimming speedily back upstream. Hold on, sweetie, Rarity said. Her little sister screamed as another rock just barely missed them. Both her and her sister were completely drenched, but that was of little matter to Rarity at the moment. Stefan, please, be careful! I know! Stefan said, his head still above the stream water so he could watch for hurtling rocks. I'm so sorry! I'm going as fast as I can! Sweetie Belle shrieked again as a particularly large boulder smashed into the bank next to them, cascading water over them once more. Who's attacking us? Sweetie asked. Rarity looked up, though only for a moment, as another wave of water washed over them. But the moment was all she needed. Huge beasts, leathery wings. Dragons! Rarity gasped. I'll get us out of here, don't worry, Stefan said. Would you two be dears and promise to hold your breath for a minute? Rarity didn't even have time to reply. Half a second later, Stefan dove in as the river deepened. Water encased both her and her sister. Rarity used her magic to cling tightly to Sweetie Belle in their rather opulent raft. The river rushed over them, and Rarity hoped Stefan would remember that ponies needed to come up for air with much more frequency than sea serpents. It looked like they wouldn't be taking Sweetie Belle back to Ponyville after all. Whew, and that right there was Chapter 5 of Age. Oh boy. Well, things are starting to pick up again. Sweetie Belle and Rarity have met up with Stefan, and they're making their way back to Sea Serpentia, after finding out that the stream going through Everfree Forest is dammed. It's blocked up by dragons. Oh boy, so the dragons are in Everfree Forest right now, which means trouble for Spike, Twilight, and the others. Find out next week, or don't, depending on what your vote is. If you want to hear more, vote yay or vote nay if you don't. That brings us to the conclusion of tonight's program. We'll end it once again with our super favorite tune, The Pony No Pony Should Ever Give Up. Just as a quick thank you and a couple of announcements for the end of this here show. Once again, check out the Hoofwave podcast. That's Hoofwave with Nav and Kuroshi. They're fantastic. Sorry, Noteworthy and Kuroshi, I should say. It's pretty darn funny, actually. You should definitely check it out. I mean, come on. Anything involving Kuroshi's got to be rude, crude, and hilarious at the same time. As well, please check out Sydneigh. If you're in Sydney, or if you happen to already know about it and want to come along to it from interstate, please check out their website and keep an eye on it. There's going to be news soon. With that, we're getting ourselves into the song, which for some reason has vanished. Well, that's fun. That's really fun. I'm fairly sure it's here somewhere. Let's see. Shouldn't be too hard to find. Well, there it is. The Pony No Pony Should Ever Give Up will sing us out. Take it away, Rick Astley and Rarity. Good night, everyone.
Every pony should know. another Jane Doe. Yeah, I'm the type of pony every pony should know. I'm the type of pony every pony should know. I'm the type of pony every pony should know.
We've known each other for so long.
I'm the type of pony every pony should know.
We've known each other for so long.
I'm the type of pony every pony should know.
We've known each other for so long.
I'm the type of pony every pony should know.
We've known each other for so long. Your heart's been aching, but you're too shy to say it. Inside we both know what's been going on. We know the game and we're gonna play it. And if you ask me how I'm feeling, don't tell me you're too blind to see. Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down, never gonna run around and desert you. Never gonna make you cry, never gonna say goodbye, never gonna tell a lie and hurt you. Never gonna give you up. We're no strangers to love. You know the rules, and so do I. Our full commitment's what I'm